Good morning. Welcome to Big Cube Sunday Morning. I'm Bob Brown, and I am honored today, and I mean honored, to have with us. Now, Dick, how do you pronounce your last name?
It's Wybrow. It sounds like eyebrow, but with a W, so it's easy. People try and make it more difficult than it is. You can see my mail. I get Wybrow, Y Brown, I've had Wyborski, for goodness sakes, but no, it's Wybrow, like eyebrow with a W, easy.
Okay, I like it. And now you are the author of Kane. Now I'm going to tell you, if you go to press that little gear button that's down there,
yeah,
you can reverse your camera so your Kane poster doesn't look like it's in a mirror.
All right. Okay. See, look, teach me technology. Here we go.
And Thaddeus.
Yes, sir.
While he is reversing his camera, he's got it going the right direction. Now I just can't see him anymore. Tell us about yourself.
Good morning. My name is Thaddeus Howze. I am a writer of speculative fiction. I write a lot of stuff, but primarily I'm now a writer of speculative fiction. I write short stories. I'm working on some novel ideas. Mostly I'm an essayist, believe it or not. I mostly write essays, different essays on technology, computers, culture, pop culture in particular. I maintain a column called The Answer Man for Sci-Fi Radio. And I write pretty much, if you have a weird question about a superhero or wondered about an idea, can a lightsaber penetrate the shield of Captain America? In the comics, the answer is no. That's the kind of stuff I answer. And I've been doing that for about 10 years, and I've been writing professionally for about 15 years. Currently, I'm a comic book writer. A video game writer. I write for a video game company called Wicked Fox Games, and we are producing new games for cozy gaming. People want to make games that they can play and then put down and not feel bad about putting them down, and then pick them up whenever they want again. This is becoming a big market because people have so many choices. So we're trying to find a way to take advantage of people's, limited amount of time to give them maximum play and minimum effort. So that's what I do. I write. I would love to be able to say I've written many novels, but I've only written 2 books so far, and my wife is telling me that I need to write more. So I feel
2 books. I mean, you're way ahead of the curve, brother. I mean, 2 books is a lot. I mean, most people say they want to write a book, and that's what they do. Their job is saying they want to write a book.
Yeah, I do know that.
Man, feel good about the 2 books. That's great. That's fantastic. Way to go.
I'm working on it. I got ideas. I just have not had the time. I have a lot of things going on. I have my wife; she's ill. I have a son who's autistic. So our life is rich and challenging. So I squeeze in the writing when I can. That's why I write short stories. So I sit down, I can bang out a short story in an afternoon and edit it in a week, and then I'm good. That particular responsibility is over. So that makes.
So here's the thing: what you do is writing novels is take all the short stories, but then write them in order. In a longer story.
Honestly, I believe that is how it's done. I mean, I look at the old guys, Lester Dent, all those guys. That's what they did. They wrote short stories, and then later either expanded that short story or connected a bunch of them together, and they made a series. So I figured that's what I'm doing. I have a bunch of short stories featuring a bunch of different characters I love, and it's slowly but surely. They're getting longer and longer, and eventually there'll be another novel out of there somewhere. I'm working on it. I'm confident I can get it done.
I'm writing book 5 at the moment while editing book 5 at the moment in the Kane series, and really I've done that. I guess I've done 5 books in the last, and this isn't a brag, I'm just telling you, but I've done 5 books in the last 18 months or so. And really what it comes down to is me stealing time from other places. It's the only way I can do it. I was doing a 12-hour a day job as a television producer up until December of last year. So that was a day that started at 7 and ended at about 7:30. And the only way I could pull that off was and this is why I can get up at 4 o'clock in the morning or 3:30 in the morning on your Sunday. The only way I could do that is just by doing a couple of hours of writing in the morning. So my mornings were getting up at 3:15, 3:30, doing the writing for a couple of hours and then going doing the day job. But yeah, that has an effect. It can take its toll, but in the end, it just depends on who you are. There's no right way to do it, no wrong way to do it. So if you're a nut like me and willing to get up at 3:15 and do it, great. And if you're not, then that's fine too. It's just that's the way I write, and it's no better or worse than anybody else. So, but 2 books, brother, be happy about that. That's fantastic.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, guys, that you're both bringing up the valid points about one thing. Writers do write.
Yes.
You find the way. When I did most of my early writing, I was doing exactly what you were doing. The early morning, I can still remember carrying my laptop with me to the doctor's offices, and while I was waiting for the doctors, I'd get another page written.
Yeah, there's people that you hear these stories all the time. There's people that have written their novel on their, well, this is dating it a bit, on their BlackBerry as they took the train from Jersey into New York City. And they did that for a year or two, and that's how they wrote it.
I've done that. I used to have a day job where I would have to be on the train for an hour. So
Yeah.
I'd bring my laptop and I'd get on the train and I'd sit down, and for that hour, I just write. And it was very effective because I was a prisoner, so I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't doing anything else. I couldn't get distracted by anything else. And the people on the train
There's also something about things that are happening around you. I wrote 2/3 of a trilogy, which I've never published because it's terrible. But I wrote 2/3 of a trilogy, and I would just go to public places, and that was living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time. And so there were sometimes I would do it at a coffee shop, but I started going to just little seedy bars at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and just put my headphones on. And I was in Marietta, Georgia, and I remember this real particularly. So I'm writing a pretty intense scene because it was kind of a thriller book. And I look up, and I kid you not, there's a woman topless dancing on a table 2 tables over, and it was just a surreal scene. And maybe shouldn't have had the top off. No judgment, but I'm just saying that maybe that wasn't the best choice at that particular moment, but it's whatever, her path is. But yeah, wherever you can, you're right, wherever you can.
Yep. I learned that.
I've written a lot in bars, but I tended to not have to get to look up and say, "Oh,
yeah."
So
well, there was that old Hemingway thing, right? He used to say, "Write drunk and edit sober."
I don't love Hemingway.
Yeah, you never know. Whatever works.
So dogs.
Yes, heard of them.
Dogs are, they're integral. I love the little montage that Thaddeus you put together for this show. For those of you watching, go to my page or Thaddeus's or BQ Press, and you can see it. But ask yourself, where would Game of Thrones have been without dogs? And
or direwolves.
Direwolves, yeah. I figured they qualified. They're dog-like, doggy enough, aside from their immense size.
Well, now, Dick, you've got a wolf in your book.
I do.
In fact, your whole series. In fact, why don't you tell us about your series?
I could give you the thumbnail sketch. So basically, the idea of Kane, the series, it's some people have described it as a reverse werewolf. And I'll be honest, if you had told me 2 years ago, hey, you're going to write a popular werewolf book, I'd go, I don't even read monster books. And so it's not really a monster book. But I will say the story came out just sort of the convoluted things that pop up into our head. So the idea of Kane is that Kane was a wolf wandering through the British Columbia forest when a man came up and bit him. And, he was nuts. The wolf got bitten by a man. The next day he wakes up and he's a 6'7" French Canadian. So it's that a reverse werewolf. But so the fun part for me was in constructing this and coming together was this idea of so of course we know with werewolves, when he steps into the moonlight, this man turns into a werewolf. But I was, as an author, kind of selfish because I was thinking I didn't want to wait 28, 29, whatever it might be days for the full moon. Why wouldn't I mean, if you're affected by the full moon, you would be affected by all the other fate. It's still moonlight. So I started to think, okay, let's say he's affected by the full moon, turns into a werewolf. What if it was a lesser phase of moon? So maybe he turns into sort of a lesser wolf, and that is dogs. So if he goes out into like a half moon or a quarter moon, depending on the size of the moon, he turns into sort of that size of a dog. And so that's sort of the premise of this, the fun part of this. So every time we go to the moonlight, if it's a little sliver of a moon, he's a chihuahua. Right. So this is sort of the fun of the story. And so the idea is that Kane, newly minted human, he's trying to get back to his wolf wife and his pack and all this sort of thing. So the entire arc of the story is about him trying to find a way to get back to his family, back to his pack. And he meets up with a woman named Imelda, and the one thing about Kane is he struggles with reading. He learns a bit about the human world from this lovely French Canadian couple. So he learns a little bit about the human world, but he struggles with reading, can't do it, and driving. Driving is just beyond him, and so he ends up partnering up with this woman who's a former criminal, a getaway driver, and she sort of becomes his driver as they sort of find these answers to return him to the wolf world. And they, over the series, they sort of develop this friendship and sort of find themselves and each other as the story goes. So yeah, it's been a real fun adventure to put together. I've been having a lot of fun writing it.
Well, I will tell you this. Two things inspired me while you were talking. One is every Chihuahua I've ever met thinks it's a direwolf.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And my wife, not only did she squeal when I mentioned you were coming on the show, she loves your stuff. She says she gives it thumbs up, funny, laugh out loud, situational, good writing. And I don't know, do you know Mark Tufo?
I have heard the name.
He integrates dogs as well.
Right.
You try and imagine the zombie apocalypse where you're trying to haul around a 90-pound bulldog.
Right.
He's got a fundamental rule: the dogs don't die.
Right.
And so do I in my books. So you found a fertile audience in her, and she loves your work. And everything I've read in your reviews is that other people are loving your work.
Yeah, I've been really blessed. It's a real fun story to write. And then it's also, and you know this, Thaddeus, when people say something, oh, it's a really funny story. I wish I could take more credit for it. But, when you're writing something, at some point, all you're really doing is you're transcribing all the lunacy in your head. And it's not like I could sit down and say, oh, here, I'm going to write this funny line now. That doesn't happen that way. What happens is you're writing along, and whatever sort of thing you're plugged into goes, here you go, here's this thing. And I'm the first one to kind of giggle. I'm the first reader. And so I feel like that's pretty funny. And I'm just writing it down. There's something to the construction of it, right? So you got to trim stuff out and tighten stuff up. But really, the inspiration of any funny lines or storylines, all that comes from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, this so resonates. Do you talk to... Now, this is for you and Thaddeus. Do you guys talk to your computer while you're writing?
Not usually. Usually for me, depends on what I'm writing. I always joke and say that when I'm working on a story, if the story is coming to me, it literally comes down from on high, and I am just a prophet. I just transcribe it as the universe presents it. And so when I'm in that zone, I don't question anything. So if it makes me laugh, great. If it makes me cry, great. I'm not really involved in it. I'm just writing it. And there are stories where I literally just channel it. I've even done it on purpose. I do something I call live writing. I'll open a window in my Facebook feed and say, I'm going to write a story. And I just write for 60 minutes. I have no idea what's going to happen. I have no idea what's going to come from it. But I really have written some really fun stories because I just let them come to me. And they end up being great little bon mots. And my friends love them. Like, you did that live? You didn't have anything else? Nope. Just me sitting there writing. because I feel like part of my writing as a creative person is both to be able to lock into a story that I want to write, you know, when I'm working on something that I have sat down to write, but I also want to be open to unconscious uh, exploration. And sometimes the only way to do that is to let yourself be open to that. So if you let yourself be used to the idea of unconsciously writing, then there are times where you're just going to make better stuff than if you are hard at work trying to grind something out and it's got to happen this way, it's got to be this way. I find that becomes the hardest writing of all. So for me, I want to be more open and just let it happen to me. And I'll laugh with the characters when we're having a funny moment. My wife is funny because she'll read my stuff and go, she'll sit there and laugh. She just sits there and laugh. And I'm like, what are you laughing at? She says, you didn't think this was funny? I said, I thought it was funny, but I didn't know it was laugh out loud funny, because she would just sit there and laugh. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad that worked. I had nothing to do with it. The characters are just doing what they came to me to do. And I'm used to that. I like it. And, you know, no, I don't talk to the computer, but I laugh with it when it happens. When I make that connection and it's good, I laugh.
Well, see, I'll sit there and talk, but what I love is, and I don't know how this works for you, Dick, is that when I'm writing on a novel where the characters are there, the world is there, it's sometimes just like opening a window and looking in and writing what you're seeing, you know, and you get to poke them a little bit to push them in the right direction, maybe, but it comes out feeling natural, and I like that when that happens.
I would even, and thank you for everybody who's commenting, by the way. Cheryl has a nice little line there too, talking about the more that you write, the more you can write. And that's really smart. And hi to everybody else too, Gordon and Helen and David and Charles. So thank you for joining the show. There's almost like a spiritual sort of moment when you really plug into something. And I like to give a small example of how much fun this can be sometimes. And I like the fact that it's a small moment. So there's another series I'm writing, and I'm not going to get into all that. It's this Helling series, but I had two characters. And I had these two characters, and they had to sneak into the big bad lair, right? The floor was electrified. And so these two characters, and I know this sounds insane, these two characters are going to ride on these Roombas, you know, the electric vacuum cleaners, because they can't touch the floor. So both of them are going to ride on these Roombas to get underneath through this tunnel beneath this evil lair, but they can't touch the floor. So they're riding on these Roombas, right? So as they're doing this, and I'm just writing the scene, right? And I have no plans other than for them to get inside. Now, obviously, the Roombas are like little vacuum cleaners, so, you know, they're going to be seeking after whatever trash might be out in front of them. So one of the characters pulls off a sock and throws his sock forward up, because suddenly this other character decided that, yeah, they're sneaking to this evil lair. Yeah, if they touch the floor, they might die. But this guy wants to beat this guy in, almost turns it into a race. Like, all the dangerous stuff around them, suddenly he wants to beat, and the other guy sees this is happening, so he pulls the piece of clothing off, and he throws it ahead, so they're racing underneath. And it was one of those things that as I'm writing it, I had no intention of doing that. I had no intention of creating this moment. But the characters, when they become that real in your head, they do take over. And suddenly I am 100% just an observer in this, watching these two characters in my head sort of like take each other on. And I like that as an example because it's very small and sort of inconsequential for the most part. But a lot of the great writing, a lot of the fun part of writing is just when the characters start to take over. And when the characters start to tell you what's happening in the story. And that is a moment where I feel like it's almost touching the face of God. There's like this sort of electricity that comes through you. It's really one of the greatest feelings in the world. I guess if for people that run, it's like a runner's high. And it's the same feeling is when you're really connected into something. It's really, really, it's an amazing feeling.
The zone.
Yeah.
That's what I call it. The zone.
Amen.
When the zone is good, you run with it. And I tell everybody in my house, I'm in the zone, go away. Don't care. If the house isn't burning down, don't bother me. I'm in the zone. because
And there are moments so when you're done, and so I'm editing right now, the fifth book in the series, and so now this is the point where the old line, "Kill your darlings," and you got to go through and see and go like, is this germane to the story? Is this something that actually either advances the characters or advances the storyline? And so there are moments where those great things you wrote and had fun with that you might have to cut, knowing that you can always put those somewhere else sometimes. But that can be sometimes the hardest bits. And so I'm slashing and burning as we speak right now with 100,000 words. And so we'll see what happens by the end of it.
Yeah, 100,000 words. Yeah, you're gonna have to slash a bit. But better too much than too little. I've had the other thing where you write and you just cannot get steam. You just don't feel.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's hard to get to that next place. So yeah, better too much than too little. I can always trim it away. And it's funny, when I'm trimming away, very often I find that a section of something I'll be writing is like, not quite what I want. So I'll just rewrite it. And then I rewrite it like, oh, this is so much better. Goodbye.
Yeah.
I throw the other thing away and be like, this is what I was looking for at the time. I just couldn't get there. So yeah.
Exactly.
So now, Thaddeus, I can imagine when you heard about the Roomba scene, you were thinking about your cat, because I'm going to out him. Thaddeus,
I'm a cat person. Oh, yeah. There's no question to that. But we have dogs here. We've had dogs here. My wife is a big dog person. She loves dogs. It's all she ever talks. We need new dogs. We need new dogs.
Well, I was just thinking about, the point was that this Roomba, that we got one that's got these little swirly things that go on outside of it. And all I can imagine of it is if touching the floor is going to be the death of you, that cat watching those little swirly things is going to have a moment of
electrification. My cats love anything that's worth chasing, spinning, moving. They're fighting right now because they've had breakfast and they feel good about the world. So now they're in here tussling and fighting. So yeah, I am a cat person. I do love cats. But my wife and I have had dogs, and I've raised dogs and trained dogs, and from birth to death. So I've trained dogs. I believe that your dog should be remote control. If you're going to own a dog, you should literally be able to call it from wherever it is, and it should show up. If you're out walking it and something happens, you should be able to snap your finger and your dog comes back to you. And you can do that. It's completely within the capacity of someone who wants to train their dog to do that.
My wife has trained me that way. She just snaps her finger and I'm there.
Hey, well, that works. And so, plus I've had big dogs. I had a Great Dane. So Great Danes are huge, massive, powerful, large, heavy dogs. And you don't want them to be leaping up on people. You don't want them running, barreling toward people. So you really have to train them when they're little. And my dog was 80 pounds when he was under a year old. And I was like, oh my God, you're so huge. I never realized how big you would get. And so we were really focused on training him. It's important.
That's a gibbous moon cane, huh?
Well, and it's funny you mentioned the Great Dane. I don't think Kane's turned into a Great Dane at this point. But part of the fun parts in the story is, and this is, a character thing, that you don't just go, look, he's a dog, isn't that funny? Move on. Because I started to think about, as the character starts to grow through the story, how does that affect him, right? So when he turns to, let's say, I'll give an example because everybody knows golden retrievers are some of the sweetest dogs in the world. So here's Kane. He turns into a golden retriever at some point, but when he's done, it's not like he just chucks it aside. Some little bit of those personality traits and some little bits of that golden retriever mindset stick with him. So as he progresses and turns into these various animals, he carries some of their traits, and that changes his character throughout the story. So when he starts off, he's in sort of this alpha wolf, I am the man sort of thing. But as he goes, that starts to get sort of changed and warbles around a bit, because suddenly there is a moment in the story, and I'm not going to give a lot away, but after he turns into the golden retriever, where before he was sort of more ruthless and more mean, now suddenly it's more difficult for him to do these sort of, more aggressive things. And so, yeah, that's kind of been fun sort of researching. And I've had a lot of readers come to me and say, put my dog in, put my dog in. which is fun. But then I also have to ask them, well, what sort of personality traits they have, what sort of, because I want that to kind of affect Kane's personality as the story progresses. And so that's really been a lot of fun. That's been a lot of fun incorporating all those dog personalities into his character. So he takes a little bit of them every time he goes.
That's a nice handle. It's an interesting way of expanding your character and letting him be more three-dimensional.
And it's funny because as the story progresses, people always talk about theme and all that sort of thing. And so, and I've always found, and I'm not the first person to say it, but you never write to theme. Theme is something you sort of discover afterwards, and then potentially you can kind of, tweak things as you go. But so there's a bit of a theme here with the entire series that Kane is becoming, even though he's a wolf, that becomes, animals when the moon comes out. But he becomes sort of progressively more human-ish as the story progresses with the help of dogs, of all things. And then Melda, the other character, she's a human who becomes more sort of animalistic as the story goes. And so a bit of a theme to the story is both of them sort of coming back to who they were or become more true to themselves by the end of the story. And that's sort of where I am in the 5th book. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun, and I had the amazing advantage of having Podium picked up the audiobooks, and so they've produced so far the first 3. They're doing the last 2 here shortly. But so I had this guy named Tim Campbell, and he is one of my narrators. I have 2 narrators. And Tim Campbell, and it's funny, when he got the gig, he says, "So I'm a French-Canadian werewolf. What does that sound like?" I'm like, "Well, that's on you, man.
That's your job, sir. You're the voice.
You work it out. That's why you get paid." And you got to hear the audiobook, man. He kills it. He is so good. It's so fun to listen to him just grind away because the characters alternated a bit. So Imelda's the main narrator, and then we get into Kane's head every now and then. And to hear it from his perspective is just a joy. He does such an amazing job. He's great.
That is a special moment when you've got a narrator that gets a hold of one of your works, your books, your stories, and rocks it. Because I can tell you, having one get it that destroys it will break your heart. And so having had that happen once, and then had some works more recently done that were just like, this is good, and it feels right when they really get it.
Oh, and I tell you what, I listen to audiobooks all the time. In fact, most nights I go to bed and I'm listening to audiobooks. I've listened to the new Project Hail Mary, Ray Porter. Ray Porter is a genius narrator. And I've probably listened to that easily 20 times in the last year or so.
Which book by Ray Porter?
Well, no, he's the narrator, but it's Andy Weir. Yeah, Andy Weir's Project Hail Mary.
Oh, okay. Because I have him list. He's done several other writers that I really like.
He's so good. He's so amazing. But yeah, in that Project Hail Mary, Andy is. They're actually turning that into a film now. They're finally going to make that a film. Andy Weir is famous for The Martian.
Yes.
Everybody knows that one, and then his story with Podium Audio is, he's an independent author or was an independent author, and then Podium came along. One of their very first acquisitions was The Martian, which obviously turned into a film. And so, so now he's doing Project Hail Mary, which is another story about a guy by himself trying to solve a big problem out in space. So, but it's very good. It's very, very good. It's definitely, and Ray takes it to a whole different level. He's so good at it. And my guys are too. I mean, Marie McCann and Tim Campbell are brilliant. I'm just so blessed to have both of them. But there's Phil Thrawn. I'm a huge fan of Phil Thrawn, another audiobook narrator. He does Slow Burn, and Slow Burn is a zombie apocalypse series. And again, same thing. I'm not like I want to go out and read zombie apocalypse books, but Bobby Adair, who wrote a brilliant sort of storyline, and I think it's not. For me, it's not always about that particular science bit or the zombie bit or or even when it comes to Project Hail Mary, it's not all the science and stuff behind it. It's sort of that emotional journey that people go through, or that sort of the relationships within a story. That to me is always what makes a story so much more fun. And they do a brilliant job of it. And it's almost like the genre itself is a vehicle to be able to tell these stories. And because I think a lot of my stories in both series are really about sort of screwed up people sort of finding each other, and then that relationship kind of makes the world work around them. Because I think in a lot of ways that is how life works. We're all kind of messed up, and we try and find the people around us to make us a little bit less messed up. And then so when that messed up person meets that messed up person, that messed up person, it's almost like a little pack. It's almost like your own little wolf pack. And together you guys kind of are working out life together. And so I try and bring that into my stories.
I was just looking it up to make sure before I said something stupid.
Right.
Well, I've seldom let that stop me, but no, I don't know if you guys familiar with a writer by the name of Dennis Taylor.
Oh, sure, Dennis E. Taylor. He's got a new one coming out.
Yeah, he is one. I consider him. I first ran into him at his first Worldcon when he was when the Bobaverse was scarcely more than was just a couple books, and we had a great time down there. And but Ray Porter does his work, and it hooked me on his work, and he's got. Well, someday I'll get Ray Porter and Dennis Taylor on here. And honest to God, until I just looked him up, I didn't realize Ray Porter was as much of an actor as he is.
Yep. I think he was Darkseid in one of the superhero movies. Yeah,
it's kind of like it was kind of like when I first met David Gerald. I had no idea he wrote The Trouble with Tribbles. I just knew I was reading this really brilliant political commentary, and so and it wasn't until I had been friends with him on Facebook for like a year and a half before I found out, oh, you write Star Trek stuff. So, yeah.
I think people forget sometimes, like you mentioned, Ray being an actor as well. I mean, narrators aren't, and I almost don't like the term narrator, because it's not like they're just, reading the book to you like mom used to at night or whatever it might be. They're performers, and they put a lot into this. They're all actors. And they're really, it's really, really impressive to hear, like, Ray doing his thing, or like Maria and Tim with mine, or Phil. It's because they bring all that emotion, and it's got to feel real. It can't feel like somebody's reading it to you. It's got to feel like somebody's telling you the story, even though they're reading it off the page. And so these guys are stellar actors. And so, and I know a lot of people haven't quite bitten into the audiobook thing, but it enriches my world to have these people in my head. I love it.
I have over 800 audiobooks.
Yeah,
in my library. Great. I mean, it's if Dennis Taylor's written it, it's in my library.
Yeah, he's got a new one coming out here the first week of September. It's the 5th book in the Bobaverse series. The first book in 4 years. Yep. No, it'll be good. He's good.
Oh, I mean,
he's another Canadian, by the way.
The Dennis Taylor fan club, but it's an example of how a great narrator or a great audio actor can bring life to the book, because and I've only listened to probably the first 30 minutes of Kane yet. Because as soon as Susie mentioned it, I said, this sounds great, and I went and turned it on. But I'm finishing up Terry Mancourt's last book, and another guy who's got a great audio actor for him.
Right.
But now, do you got any audio books out? Any audio work out there, Thaddeus?
Nothing I haven't read myself. I do a little voice acting from time to time, and I perform my books publicly, or my short stories publicly. We have the Bay Area is rife with contests like Litquake, and there's a couple coming up. There's either a Litquake coming up. We have a couple of things they do down in Hayward. So at least 3 or 4 times a year, I'll get up and read something that I've written and to good effect. People enjoy the writing, they enjoy the stories, and I do have a writing style that lends itself to being performed because I usually only have a few characters, and it's usually just a couple of scenes, so it tends to be episodic and able to be delivered in that way. I enjoy doing that, and I've even put a couple of them online. Dracula's cat Persephone is one of the ones I've written that I've actually shared online with folk, and they like it. And I probably would do more if I had time. I think for me, time is the issue. But I probably will do more in this year, coming in the rest of this year. I'm trying to diversify the projects and just to make it feel different, to give myself some movement room. Plus, I've been doing some voice acting with another group for this company that does a online version of Star Trek that they're doing as a model to sell, as a model to showcase their work. So I've been getting to play the great Benjamin Sisko. So that's been fun. I've enjoyed doing that. So I've enjoyed voice acting. It's become quite entertaining, and who knows, I may pick it up and try that again. So who knows? It's still early for me, but I don't have any books done that way, but I may try one day.
Hey,
I tried reading one of my books. I tried doing Hell Link as an audiobook, and I set it up. I got a mic. I got software. I put I did it in a closet, and unfortunately, it was in the middle of summer here in New Zealand, and the only thing I think I lost about 6 pounds just from sweating the entire time. Because it just trapped. You're getting a little bit lightheaded as you're reading. Oh, why is my voice slurring? And so because I'm going to pass out from heat stroke is what is about to happen. But in the end, I did radio for about a dozen years or so. But I don't think I could be. I ended up deleting the files because even though I'd read the entire book, it just wasn't very good. I'm not that good of an actor. So kudos to you, man, because it's not easy to do that sort of stuff.
No, it's not. And that's one of the challenges is, when we get up in front of a bunch of people to read the room, and part of the performance is reading the room. So, when I go to an event, I very often will bring half a dozen stories, and I don't know what I'm going to read. I just bring about, usually I get 8 to 10 minutes. So I'll have 6 or 8 stories. I've watched the room. I've watched other people read. And if I didn't start the room, then I'm watching them and feeling where they're going to be, and then I pick a story that I think will work for them.
That's like with stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy is the same way. I did stand-up for a good couple of years, and you walk in and you see the stuff that's working, and if it's more of a blue crowd, then then you're going that way.
Yeah.
Or if it's more of kind of a fun crowd or a light crowd, then you go that way. So yeah, you just kind of read what's happening and you move on. Because ultimately, it's about entertaining people or making people happy,
connecting to the audience, making them happy, making them laugh. Yeah. And for me, most of my stories that I read publicly are humorous, if not completely humor. They are humorous. And so I like the idea that people get to laugh. And it's funny because a lot of people don't expect to laugh. They're like, we've been listening to grim stories all evening. Let's be all grim. And I'm like, nah, we're not going to do that. I'll find one of my stories that I know will make them laugh. And then they just sit there and they're surprised that they're laughing. It's like, yeah, that's what I wanted. I wanted you to get out of whatever that was into something more ebullient. So yeah, we have a good time doing that. Now I have a question for you. We have dogs, and we have not mentioned any dogs other than Kane. Who are your favorite dogs, gentlemen? Favorite dogs in fiction and literature? Speculative fiction, at least.
I'm waiting for the host.
Yeah, Bob. Yeah, because you got a house full of dogs. So what's your thing? Which is your favorite dog from literature?
Oh, me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, I'm sitting here just listening away. Well, I have to say, Mark Tufo, in his, he has spoiled me with his how his dogs help tell the story. So when it comes down to it, I actually owe Mark a lot because after listening to 20 of Mark's zombie books and watching the lengths he goes to get us not only inside his characters' heads, but inside, he's actually got, I think, 3 books written from the perspective of the dogs
really
surviving a zombie apocalypse. it has been a great service. And I mean, I grew up on Lassie and Rin Tin Tin. You know,
Old
the
Yeller.
you
Old Yeller.
can't, I mean, Timmy, bark, bark. Yes, we know Timmy went down the well. But
That's not what Lassie said. You know what
okay.
Lassie really said is,
She
I
said
lost
I
that kid
pushed him.
again. I lost that kid again. I don't know what happens. Every time I turn around, the kid is gone. Somebody come get this kid. That's what Lassie's saying. We all know that.
You gotta love it. Well, but one thing I really find though is the latest book I'm working on. It's called Breaking Up. It's what's going to happen when the people on the right start really getting serious about the parts of the country they can't take over. They're going to split off from. The is I've given characters dogs. A lot of the characters have dogs, and you can soften an ultra right wing nut job a little bit by giving them a dog, and it'll give you a chance to find a human side of this person that you might be challenged to write something uh, nice about them. Or like with the guy I have as president, he's got a pair of pugs, and I've gotten complaints that the pugs keep trying to steal the scenes from him. And it's like, okay, as long as you're reading and enjoying it, let the pugs be happy. Uh, but that's where it was. I mean, heck, I even liked Crypto. You remember Crypto?
Of course, I know Crypto. Crypto's in my list. He is Superman's dog. Oh yes, Crypto. And I put in quotations dog, because I've always, even as a kid, I was like, wait a minute now. He comes from another planet, and he has a superpowered dog. Yeah, that seems suspect. So I've always wondered what Crypto really was. And they play it straight. He's a dog with superpowers, and he just happens to come from Krypton. And so I've often wondered, what are Kryptonians, and how do they have these powers, and why does their dog have all these powers? I would always wonder, what kind of planet is Krypton where everybody is a weapon of mass destruction?
Well, think about it. Crypto, I mean, when Crypto goes and starts digging up the roses, you got a problem.
Yeah. I remember my own dog digging up my yard, and the reason I have a paved backyard is because my Great Dane thought he could make it to China. He did. He got out there and he would dig a hole 6, 8, 10 feet deep, and so deep he could be in the hole.
Yeah.
And he just thought that this was God's gift to just make holes. So we just basically covered my backyard in stone for that very reason, because he was so destructive. And I could not imagine Crypto. Crypto would have been a nightmare for anybody without superpowers.
Yeah, I need your training.
I love dogs and stories because I guess the irony in a way is dogs help us be more human in a way, because I don't know, to some extent, maybe it sort of allows us to be kinder or sweeter or whatever it might be. But like you take a look at some of the Dean Koontz novels, and when he sort of inserts dogs into that, and he'll do stuff like give them a little more mental powers or whatever it might be. But really, it's an opportunity to be able to see the main character in a different light. Like Bobby Dare's new one, Burn Box. He's got a dog in that, and that plays a bit of an ancillary sort of character throughout the story. But it does show, the care that the main character has for this animal in this sort of apocalypse, this sort of wasteland. And so I love dogs or animals in stories because it does humanize the main characters. It shows, because it's an opportunity to show compassion. Anytime, a lot of times when it's a couple of people in the story, there's so much nuance to it, and there's so much holding back. But when we're showing affection to animals, you don't think about what's on the mind of the animal. You don't think about, if I'm giving the dog kisses on the head or something like that. You can't really do that with a person, for the most part. They might frown on that, and there might actually be police activity depending on how hard you're kissing the person on the head. But really, what it comes down to is it's showing affection for animals, or in stories, It's that relationship with dogs and even cats in stories that shows us to be more human, and that's really lovely. And I love that. I love being able to incorporate the animals into stories to show that human side.
Yep.
There's Phyllis Irene Radford. She just sent a note. She has she wrote a series called Merlin's Descendants, and she had everything from an Irish wolfhound, but she almost always gives her magical characters a what do you call that? That sidekick that they get.
Right.
Familiar.
Familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. And it has helped. It adds a level of, like you said, it adds a level of humanity.
Right.
Oddly enough, by bringing in the dog. And then Heather Alexander, she's a folk singer. Oh, I'm sorry, Alexander James Adams. He's a pretty cool folk singer, and he took some of those notions that she had and wrote a song called "The Familiar's Promise." That if you ever hear a song that captures that promise between a pet and its person, it's captured there, because that is such a powerful link. And writing about it or incorporating into your writing and really capturing it is some potent medicine.
If you can do it. Yeah, I find that works for me. When I was reading, so my list of dogs here, I discovered when I was a child, there was a Greek legend of the perfect hunting dog. And I can't pronounce his name, Elapis or Elapis or something like that. And he was the perfect hunting dog. He could never, he always caught his prey. He was a monster hunter. So he was in the employ of a monster hunting hero. And so this dog basically was created by the gods. He was unstoppable, inexorable, never tired. And he was the perfect dog until one day someone created the perfect prey. And this was the uncatchable fox. So you've got the never failing dog and the uncatchable fox, and they're both monsters. So they're giant size. The fox has a taste for human flesh, so it runs across the Greek countryside eating the Greeks of the period, and the dog is trying to catch him. And they basically, in my mind, I envision them destroying sections of Greece as the gods watch this in entertainment. And in their entertainment, they don't take into consideration the people until they start destroying their temples. And then once they start destroying the temples, then the gods are like, Zeus, do something. And Zeus is, of course, having a great time because this mayhem is his fault. That's his dog. He put it down there. So he doesn't do anything until they start destroying his temple. And then he's like, oh, no worshipers. Well, that won't do. So he turns the dogs to stone, or depending on the legends, he puts them in the dog and the fox to stone, or he puts them in the heavens. And that was one of my first favorite magic dog stories, because it was such a weird thing to imagine immortal beings creating immortal monsters and allowing them to just run roughshod over the people until such time as their own concerns became an issue. And then it's like, oh, got to tidy that up real quick. But once I started reading that, I started realizing that there were lots of magical dogs, and legends were covered with them. My favorite, of course, is that three-headed hellhound, Cerberus. Everybody loves Cerberus. And he gets much love for a variety of different stories. He shows up in various forms. Sometimes he's cuddly. But I think there's a little cartoon right now where someone has drawn a picture of Cerberus as a cute and darling little animal companion with three heads, and it's always trying to help people and be nice, and it's called Cerby. And it's just the cutest thing. So even though Cerberus is a terrifying monster, very often we have made him into other things because we love dogs. And so, yeah, Cerberus protects hell. He protects hell, keeps people. His job is to keep people out, which I never quite understood what that was about, because who volunteers to go to hell? No, I mean, is there like a list of people going, I'm going to hell this week, and we need a dog to keep people out? So I always envision him mostly keeping people in.
Hercules went down there.
Yeah, but Hercules had no sense anyway. You know, he was dumb as toast. He's big and strong and dumb as toast. So yeah, Hercules went there, but most people avoid hell. No one's going there. At least it never made any sense to me. So I was assumed he was for keeping people in.
Well, how many people move to Texas every year?
Yeah, there is that.
I like Texas. I
Yeah,
lived in Dallas. I lived in Dallas for a year back in '89. And it was, I mean, it was weird too, because the hell would have been the fact that it actually had its first ice storm
yeah.
in like decades when I was down there. I'd come down from Minnesota. And so all the folks around me were like, what do we do on the ice? Like, I got this.
Yeah, because you knew
I'm
that.
your guy.
Yeah,
I grew up in snow.
That's
But
right.
it's funny, as you were talking about the Greek story, I was, the legend, because I mean, all legends were written by somebody. Legends become something where it's like, oh, this is a story passed down through the ages. But at some point, somebody had to just sit down and with his papyrus and with his quill or her quill and write the story out. And so what's funny to me as you tell the story, the idea that there's a story in the Greek legends of this dog sort of misbehaving and acting up, that there was someone who wrote that at some point, and we all write stuff from our own lives, that person back then, Euripides or whoever it was having a difficult time with the neighbor's dog. It's like, fine, okay, I'm going to put that dog in a story, and that's what I'm going to do, because that's what we do. We take stuff from our own lives, and people that we don't like, and we put them in stories, and we treat them badly. That's what we do. So at some point,
I can see that
during that Greek legend way back when, old Euripides or whatever is thinking like, okay, Philophases, his dog's been eating my chickens. I'm going to put him in a story to make him awful, and that's how that all came about.
That's how that story
he had
came
a bad neighbor dog, and this became a legend that lasted 2,000 years. So that's great. I love that.
Yeah,
you heard me mention Martufo. I asked him once. He has a vampire witch who is an absolute bitch in his books, and I just asked him. I said, "Okay, now, was she an old girlfriend or what?" And he just laughed at me. But my God, that premise that you think about who some of these people must have were based on. How bad were they?
Yeah,
I try to avoid that. I try not to write anybody I know into my stories. It's just easier because the temptation is so strong. You
don't have to put their names though.
Oh
right?
no! I wouldn't put their names, even if I did. I wouldn't put their names. But I try to resist it because I want to feel like I don't want to ever look back at something and go, yeah, I know who this was. I don't want that. I don't want the karma from that. I want to feel like these characters are wholly new, wholly separate, and I don't have any feeling about them other than they were characters doing a thing and that I enjoyed them or didn't enjoy them intentionally. I didn't want.
But all those characters come from you, right? Any character on the page is some facet of your personality.
Yeah, but that's okay because I contain multitudes.
It's some piece of your own head. Any of those characters.
I contain multitudes. I can be crazy on paper. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I never wanted to put people I disliked in my stories because bad things would happen to them, and we don't want that.
Yeah, that's the fun part.
I know people do that, but I'm trying to be better.
No, I'm not better. I'm awful. I'll put him in. I'll destroy him. I'll have him chewed up.
I try to be better than that.
There's a fun part in, I think it's Hellraiser, the third book in the Hellic series, and it's this guy, he's a social media person, and it's sort of based on somebody, but it's not wholly, right? But basically it's a show-off social media person, and what happens to him is just glorious. It's just such a delightful sort of moment where he's sort of like hang gliding, and he's got like all these cameras all over him the entire time, and he's a bit of a show-off. And something happens where he doesn't quite make it as he hang glides live streaming, and he doesn't quite make it through the hole. He misses just a little bit, and it's just a fun moment. It's just kind of a fun moment. So I get a kick out of it.
What about? I want to get you too, Dick. What's your dog? What's your legendary dog, or what's your favorite dog in fiction besides your own?
Yeah, no, I mean, mine isn't really a dog. He's various dogs, but I mean, I think I just like, for the most part, like I mentioned the Kuntz ones because those kind of mean a lot to me. Cujo's always a fun one. That's always kind of a kick. But no, I don't think there's any particular one. I sort of just like the idea of what the dogs bring to the other characters. And if I were to like any particular dogs, it would be some in, like I mentioned, some of the Dean Kuntz stories because they have an intelligence behind them, and I like that. I like them because when I take a look at, we have a dog. We have 3 cats too, by the way, but we've got a dog, and allegedly there's intelligence somewhere in there.
Cats
I
are
haven't seen it
intelligent.
yet.
Cats are
But
intelligent. You just haven't learned to
yeah,
listen to them yet.
yeah, no, the cats are definitely smarter than the dog. I don't have any question with that. It's just the dog is much stronger, so they got to defer to the dog. In
They do.
fact, the dog's best friend is one of our cats, and it's kind of cute to see them rolling around. But yeah, no, I love animals and stories, especially as I mentioned earlier because of how it humanizes the characters.
Right. Right. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. When I was making my list, I realized that the first non-legendary fictional dog was J.R.R. Tolkien's Huon. And I don't know if you've ever read the Silmarillion. Most people haven't because it's really long and hard to read. But I love the Silmarillion. In my mind, it was better than Lord of the Rings because Lord of the Rings is full of people just murdering each other for fun and profit. And what I liked about the Silmarillion was we got to see the backstory and how the world came to be. And my favorite story is the Lay of Beren and Luthien, where that's the first human elf romance. And of course, it's doomed. You know it's doomed. You know it's tragic. But Huon, a great godhound, makes that relationship work. He facilitates it. He loves them both. He tries to save them both. And, he's also invincible until he meets the greatest werewolf in the world. In which case they destroy each other. You knew that was going to happen. So the whole time you're reading the story, you're like, yeah, he's not going to make it. I know he's not going to make it because I love him so. And of course, he does not make it. But he dies like a boss. And you cheer for him. You cheer for the characters. And it was the first time I ever felt any particular way about a dog in a story. I had a feeling. It was the first time. It's like, I feel this dog. I feel its connection. And I felt like the writer, Tolkien made that. That's probably Tolkien's Old Yeller. So yes, that's exactly what it was. It's Tolkien's Old Yeller, because in the end, you knew he was not going to make it. And yet you love him every step of the way. He can only speak 3 times. And when he does, he speaks wisdom. And every time he spoke something true and wise and obviously smarter than everybody in the story. But I loved it. And it's one of those that whenever I reread the Silmarillion, when I get to this section, it's like, should I skip this? Oh, I'm not going to skip it. I just have to read it again. And it always moves me. So it is one of my favorite dog stories in print today. You still with us, Bob?
Say again, sir?
So you still with us?
Oh, I'm still with you. I just was checking something. Every now and then, you guys keep talking about. Okay, Cliff, what's with Tolkien's Old Yeller?
Huon is Tolkien's Old Yeller.
Oh.
In that he is a great dog. He does great things and dies to save the heroes.
This will be a sad thing, but dogs ruined my appreciation for George Washington.
Why?
Well, he was leading his column back when he was a British officer. He was leading his people in to do an attack. And he was so paranoid about keeping it a surprise that he made everybody in his army kill their dogs.
Ooh.
Or he killed them for them.
That's kind of monstrous, but we already knew that.
Well, when I read that, I had to go actually pull the string and make sure I wasn't just reading but no. And it just is a reminder that some of our modern opinions towards animals that we have today weren't quite as embedded in society. They were considered more ephemeral and replaceable maybe by some people back then.
They were tools. As far as I can tell, when I look through history and study dogs and some cats, They were more tools than they were objects of human interaction and affection. They were never, they weren't pets. So if you had if you had a collection of wolfhounds and you went out hounding and you did your thing and you were out fighting and battling against the elements, you lost hounds. It just happened. And you were like, well, next. And you just get some new ones. And I was like, wow, that's just,
I was reading that.
All get out.
But I suppose too, far be it from us from second guessing, one of the greatest generals
Right.
back then. I mean, he would have had a reason for it, I suppose, because we've got a dog here, and if my dog goes downstairs and barks at the neighbors, and I try to tell him to come inside, he just keeps barking. So if he felt that, listen, this is probably not good. We've got all these dogs here. They're going to give us away. I don't know. I have no idea. If he felt that was the way to go, it's sad that he would have done that. But he probably had a good reason for it. Maybe they didn't want to feed the dogs anymore. Or maybe that's what became lunch that day. I don't know.
Well, I understand his reasoning.
Yeah.
But for me, it detracted a little bit from his humanity and empathy.
Right. Well, I think he was a soldier, so his humanity might have been a little compromised. And he was probably tired.
Not only a slave owner, but when you read some of the biographies of him, one of them, I can't remember who wrote it, says that he would have been, had he been born 1,000 years before, he would have been the leader of the savage tribe, marching through the forest at the head. He was a big man.
He was probably a cat lover. In the end, he was probably a cat lover. That's probably what it was.
Wait a minute now. Don't put me in this. Cat lovers aren't necessarily homicidal maniacs.
I'm pretty sure that Washington's greatest love was money. Because one of the reasons he got so pissed off at the British is they wouldn't let him be an officer. They wouldn't let him enter into their club full scale, and the British bankers wouldn't give him access to Martha's money. And those were two of the things that really affected his attitude towards the British. But that's neither here nor there. We're talking about dogs, and you guys have been wonderful. Oh, and one minor note. We're talking about audio. Andrew Lucas pointed out that two of his favorite narrators is the kid that played
Will
Star
Wheaton.
Trek. Will Wheaton and I never can pronounce his name. Stephen Rudnick.
I like Will Wheaton. Sometimes he's a bit of a challenge for me because when it comes to things that are humorous, I always find you got to play him kind of straight and you let the words work. And so sometimes, and Will's great. He's fantastic. I wouldn't take anything away from him, but he has a style that I don't always love. Some stuff, yes, some stuff not as much. Because when he reads something he knows is funny, you can hear in his voice, he's like, what I'm reading now is very funny. And to me, that detracts away from the humor sometimes. That might just be me, but like I was listening, he just did John Scalzi's starter villain. And anytime there was a funny moment, Will starts like reading it funny. And for me, that takes away from it. So I don't know if he was given that direction. I do like Will, but I don't know if he was given that direction. But I find that anytime there's something that's humorous, you just got to read it straight and then it becomes funny. If you read it as if it were funny, then it's less funny.
The name was Steve Rudnicki. He did one of
Will's a great actor
by him.
I don't find his humor works for me.
Yeah. Well, the thing going back on Will, he does a whole bunch of the guy he narrates almost everything for. He said, she said, he said. He tags every line of dialogue. If you listen to that, sometimes you can almost hear the weariness in Will's voice as he says, I'm going to the bathroom, he said. Oh, she said, shut the door and lift the toilet seat, she said. Just the mundaneness of it. And
I think sometimes people give narrators permission, or at least they have conversations where they can get rid of some of those dialogue tags. Because obviously, if it's just two people in the scene, you should be able to tell for the most part from what's being said who's saying what. When you get into a scene that's more than two people, then you do have to start putting one of those dialogue tags in.
Yeah.
But less so with a narrator.
Yeah, but anyway, they're all great. John Scalzi, that's the name.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned. The starter villain, which is still doing really, really well. I just, like I said, I find it a challenge, and I'm not to repeat myself, but when he's reading the humor stuff, he leans in with such a "this is really funny right now," and that starts to. I don't like that as much. Some other people might, but he's very good at what he does.
I hadn't noticed that. I actually tried to hire him one time to do a Jim Wright story. In the end, he passed, but. It was sad. Oh, and by the way, if anybody doesn't mind, let's dedicate this show to cricket. Christina named.
Oh, that poor hound. Yeah.
No.
I'm still traumatized by that. I don't even pretend to understand what that was about. That's psychosis.
I mean, as somebody who has had to put down a dog, it is not something casual that you joke about the way she did. It's a horrible, horrible thing to have to do. And it says more about your own failures than it does anything about the dog. And it's just, that was horrible.
That's horrible. And every time I hear about it, every time she's tried to backpedal it or whatever she's doing about it, I just don't understand the psychosis behind it, because I just couldn't imagine taking a young, inexperienced dog and deciding, well, you're not trainable. I'm just going to take you out back and shoot you. What? It's not sick. It's just a puppy. Puppies do things. I won't even tell you the horrible things my puppies did while they were puppies. When they're puppies, dogs do stuff. Mine ran away. The fence blew down during a storm. Both of my dogs decided they're going on walkabout. They're puppies. They just hopped on the other side of the fence and kept on going. I had to hunt them down. They made it to another county. It happens. You don't shoot your dog for that. I just don't understand it. And the more I see these people in office, the more I fear for all of us. So,
I'll tell you what, you guys have been great guests, and it's been a wonderful conversation. But I've let us run over here, and so any closing remarks you want to make, Thaddeus?
Cats rule. No. No.
He didn't. At least he didn't say dogs drool.
I could have said that, but I like dogs. I mean, I'm not opposed to them. I think that part of this whole experience for me was just the idea of talking about dogs have been around with us for 30,000 years. They're the first animal we domesticated. And 10,000 years before we domesticated anything else. So we're out there in the wild, and dogs are like, yo, man, you're going to eat that? Because if you're not going to eat that, we can hook you up. We can take care of that. And they're like, well, yeah, we're not going to eat those bones. They're bones. But, why don't you help us hunt stuff, and we can all eat together? And dogs are like, oh, shit, you had me at hunting. Let's do this. So 30,000.
I gotta imagine there were a few hunters that weren't that good at hunters. And
they got better with dogs. They got better with
still
dogs.
Hungry.
Dogs made us. When I think about it, we made dogs. Dogs made us, because they made it possible for us 30,000 years ago to have a chance against animals that were huge and powerful and dangerous. And unfortunately, they were tools. They were like tools. If a dog died, I'm sure those cavemen were like, bummer. Okay, we're going to eat that guy? It's a strange symbiotic relationship that humans have very little else to compare to the relationship we have with dogs.
Dogs, pigeons.
amazing.
Goats and chickens.
Dogs have made us what we are, and no matter how we like to think about dogs, we probably wouldn't be here without them. Now, less or so with cats, but I think the agricultural age probably made cats pretty useful. Let's face it, if cats didn't do their job, we'd all have weasels right now.
Hey, yeah. I mean, cats did live in the barn eating mice.
They ate rats, and rats are prolific. Matter of fact, ask New York and Chicago what their number one problem is. They have a title of a person called a rat czar. Their job is to hunt rats, figure out how to get rid of rats, and New York and Chicago are doing very poorly in that regard. So we know that if we don't manage these populations, they get out of control. And that's something that cats did for us, just like dogs did for us. I mean, so, because there are plenty of dogs that were ratters too. All them little tiny dogs we all think are so cute. Savage monsters in the right, terrier, rat terrier, savage monster in the right field of endeavor. Yeah, he's a lap dog, but I kill rats with pleasure, and enthusiasm.
Like a rat terrier?
Yeah, they were enthusiastic little dog murderers, little rat murderers. So we have a relationship with dogs that nothing else comes close to. So I admire dogs for the gifts they brought to humanity. And that's why when I was starting to read this thing about dogs and legendary dogs in fiction, I was like, yeah, I could do this. Dogs are great. We really owe them pretty much everything. And I feel sorry about the Chihuahua and all them little flat-faced dogs. I feel bad about that. I'm so sorry humans did that to y'all. I'm sorry. We made mistakes. Mistakes were made. Blame will be assigned. It's been great to meet you there, Dick. You were wonderful, and I'm going to look for your book, sir.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. I'll check yours out too, and thank you, Bob, and to your lovely wife, who invited me on. So, thank you so much.
Oh, Dick, what I've read of your work, I am looking forward to just doing a binge. And
great, man. That'd be great. Let me know.
It will be great, and I'll usually leave a review. And then later on, but I just, when she just first told me about it and the pound scene and everything, and I mean, I'm not going to try, I don't want to do anything spoiler, but thank you for coming. And you clearly have so much more like you and Thaddeus both have so much more to offer in the way of experience in writing and what you do. And I look forward to seeing you guys come back and share your wisdom with the folks. And thanks much. And so later on, oh, by the way, as everybody knows, we're working on Alternative Truths Southern Edition, which we hope to have out here in a couple months. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And we are going to be within a month announcing a new anthology that will be rocking your boat. And so we're very excited about it.